Dear Saturday, I've been listening to your episodes about diversity and I have a question. My story is set in a high fantasy world where there is only one race, one gender, one sexual orientation and one belief system. I want to include diverse characters, but there simply isn't room for it to make any sense within the story. I ran into this same problem when I wrote a sci-fi story entirely about monogendered blue aliens too. More and more, I think that diversity and fantasy or science fiction just don't go together. Is this a problem with simply no solution, as I suspect it is? Signed, Wrong from Wrongville.
10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name.
Dear Wrong, this is a problem that a lot of people seem to run into. It's actually wrong of me to say that they run into the problem. To be honest, this is a problem that a writer creates for themselves the second they start saying things like, in my story, diversity isn't an issue because the plot takes place in a realm that doesn't require it. That's a decision that you make at the outset, and it's a decision that you control entirely. So if you're writing sci-fi or fantasy and you are having this problem, here's a couple of questions that you need to ask yourself. First, what is the point of this wonderfully homogeneous and rather boring society you've created? Why have you chosen to represent people, or given its fantasy, your brand new race, in this way? What does the story gain from it? If the answer to the question is, well, it's just what I wanted to write, then I think what you're doing is not so much encountering a problem as it is making an excuse for not having to deal with a diverse cast. You're bucking a responsibility to a diverse cast using the excuse that there just isn't any room for that in your imagination, and that's a bad thing. Wrong. That's very bad. Otherwise, it does have something to do with the story, and you're making a point about what a lack of diversity does to a society. Are you saying it's awesome? Are you saying it's terrible? Either way, that's a pretty big theme you've chosen to take on there, and I wish you luck with what will be a central and very important issue to your story. Second, is there anything I can do to represent diversity in an indirect way? So you have a race of monogendered blue aliens, but within this society, are they diverse in other ways? What sets them apart? How do these groups interact? Why do some hate each other and some form alliances? Ask yourself, who from your audience might identify with which group from this imagined world? A lack of physical difference does not immediately equal a lack of total diversity. Maybe some monogendered blue aliens have spots and others don't, and the spots saw fit to enslave the no spots centuries ago. Maybe some blue aliens have a lisp and others don't, and the lispers have been forced into exile because everyone finds them annoying due to the way they were born. If you're not going to represent people from our world wrong, you're still going to be using those people as a basis for your characters in some way. Keep in mind who you're proxying. People can see themselves in all kinds of avatars. So, third question. Could your story exist without an audience to read it? I know, right? Kind of tree falling in the woods stuff, but think about it. Wrong. The audience read your book, and they are the ones looking for themselves. You might be writing a story that is set entirely post-race, but the people reading your book don't live in that world. No matter how hard you might wish for people to ignore the issues of society today in favor of the new ones you're presenting, they literally can't. It isn't the case. A reader marginalized by the world today will still live in that world once they put down your monogendered blue aliens book. They'll still have to look harder than anyone else to find a representation of themselves in media of all kinds, and you're not helping. So the fourth question is it your responsibility to help? Well, that's up to you. If you're writing to me wrong, then chances are you're a writer for a young adult audience. I guess you don't have to help those who need heroes the most, but in my opinion, you're kind of a dick if you don't. You're not a dick. Wrong. You're a YA writer.